So, you got any questions about what we were talking about with the Fetter number 9, by the way, restlessness?
Um, I mean, not really about that fetter. I mean, it has been really interesting for me that this is a fetter, and because this is something that like that I saw in my behavior for a long time, but like I don't know now I focused on it a bit the last week, and it's been really helpful, I think, to just be more calm and not get stressed out so easily about stuff. And also like seeing that sometimes if I have nothing to do, my mind like searches for things to worry about. Yeah.
Yes, excellent. So, this is the value of teaching the Dhamma in this way from the time of the Buddha.
Mm.
Is that people can see these things in themselves once they're pointed out as something that's universal, and everybody has these things. That in fact you could go so far as to say everybody's in turmoil, because turmoil is another word for restlessness. We're all kind of restless, in the sense of, in a way, being on guard, um, in a place and in a way that's safe, while at the same time not paying attention to the things that are in fact dangerous.
Mm.
That it's because we're focused on the wrong thing. We think the danger is coming from one place when in fact it's coming from someplace else.
Right.
And you know where those places are, don't you? Right. We think wrongly that the danger is coming from the outside, and so we're on guard for it. And in fact, the real problem is coming from the inside. And we need to start paying attention to that. And one of the things we find in there is this restlessness. But one of the qualities is that once the restlessness settles down, then we recognize that it's kind of more empty space than we thought. That while there was that ping pong ball going back and back and forth all over the place, we thought that it was kind of filling the place up. But when that ping pong ball slows down or stops, we recognize, wow, there's a huge, a vast cave, or one of the words can be used is in fact basilica. Do you know the word basilica?
Yeah.
That is in fact the word that's in the Greek. I don't know exactly what the Aramaic was, but by the time it ever got written down in the Bible, that's the word that Jesus was using when he called it Basilica Theos. All right, and what he's talking about is the cathedral,
Mm.
or the vastness or the voidness that is within, and that's in fact God, that emptiness. All right, so the kingdom of God is actually a basilica, but the basilica's most important quality is its emptiness, its vast emptiness. And so by beginning to slow down the restlessness, we also see part of the quality of that vast emptiness is also the fact that the here now, while it's meaningless as far, or it's empty of meaning, it's not empty of activity. That the here now moment is in fact hundreds of millions or bazillions of cause and effect relationships literally running at the speed of light.
All the way back to the Big Bang, right?
Right, and it's continuing on. In fact, the bang, according to the astrophysicists, is that we're still in the Big Bang, and the bang is still continuing to go. So we're literally in the process of being in an explosion.
Right.
And so that's the vast quantity of it, and we can begin to tap into that by learning not to take an individual object that we leave consciousness or seeing as merely seeing and hearing as merely hearing, without grasping on or holding to any particular object long enough to perceive it. Because we already understand that we don't actually live in the real world, we live in a mental world.
Yeah.
Almost like, even if you think of AI, artificial intelligence, the artificial intelligent computer is not the same thing as the networks of wires and cables and Wi-Fi's and all of that to do all of the camera work that is hooked up to the AI. And that the cameras and the network and the AI is not reality.
Right.
All right, well, that's exactly the same thing with us. And you could go so far as to say that for the jobs that it has to do, AI is superior to humans. And if that were not true, then we would not be losing our jobs to robotics. Because I said in some cases. And so in that regard, artificial intelligence is superior to natural intelligence, because we've got a whole big problem with the fact that our perception is inadequate to the task of accepting all of reality. And then, in fact, when we stop perception or let perception go kind of idle and just stay with senses and kind of bounce back and forth between the eyes and the ears and the body and just all over the place, trying to gain as much data as is happening right now, you wind up understanding that there's a huge flood going on. And all of that stuff that's happening is also empty of any meaning, that there's really a void there. And everything is void or empty of a self or a purpose or a meaning. That everything is going on is just a mere cause-effect relationship. Now, that may go so far as to appear that it's going in the direction of, say, Sam Harris and other philosopher atheists when they talk about the Christian concept of free will versus no free will. And the atheists, because they're talking about everything happens through cause-effect relationship, that means that there is no free will. And the Christians say, oh no, God gave us free will because we have the ability to think for ourselves and then screw up intentionally. All right. The answer to that conundrum, by the way, is that free will is not free. It's expensive. It's expensive because we're not watching where we're going, and that's suffering. But it's also expensive in the sense that we have to take on right view. And to take on right view takes right effort. Okay, so in that regard, will takes right view and right effort. And it happens every time you have right mindfulness. And that builds right intention or right attitude. So those four things. And for the beginner, by the way, even at the very beginning, when the student first starts practicing, and he's told to watch the breath, and then he recognizes the mind has wandered away from the breath. Now he's in that existential dilemma immediately. Am I going to feel bad because I don't match up to my own expectations?
Yeah.
Or am I going to take on right view? Because I was wallowing in wrong view, now I can take on right view. And so in the beginning, right view needs only very little. The first quality of right view is the knowledge that I can change the mind out of the first right view is in fact to recognize that past and future, dwelling in past and future, is prone to pain and painful, and to being in the here now is worthwhile doing. So that's the very, very first knowledge that that the student must have is that staying stuck where I was will continue to give pain, but if I can clean the mind, so that's the first knowledge. The second knowledge comes from the idea that that I can do it, and that the next one is the quality of looking at it. In fact, these things are really, really wrapped up together. Is that dwelling in the past and the future, because I was started off and compelled to be a victim in the past, that by being in the present moment, I'm coming out of that victimhood. I'm coming from the position of being a loser into being a winner. That's also one's right view. So that has the quality of success to it.
All right.
And so with these three things, and that's just very basic, and that one of I can do it then becomes stronger and stronger, because it has to overcome the doubt that I am a loser and I can't do it and I'm not good enough and this is too hard to work and oh poor me, and I'm doing what I've always done right now and I don't want to take the effort to change. All right, and that all has to be overcome so that we can come to that first noble step of I know I can do this. I know I can come out of the past and the future kind of thinking and be here now, and I can become, while I'm in that state, to start investigating what needs to be investigated, including this restlessness, which has both qualities of the body and the mind. But in fact, what's worthy of paying attention to, the first thing that the Buddha mentions is, in fact, the Satipatthana. We practice Anapanasati for the fulfillment of the Satipatthana, and the way that we do that is by coming here to this present moment and look at what's going on with the body, with the feelings, with the senses.
So,
go ahead.
So is this the purpose of the feathers? Like not to say, oh, I've checked this first feather last year and now I'm checking this and this, but instead like being just really attentive to the right now, which feathers are present? Is this how to approach this?
No, actually, fetters come up in layers, and that one will be built, one fetter will build on the other so that when they burst out, you can see them. It's almost like a pimple or a blackhead. All right, and so there's one on top of the other. And one of the lower ones, this is restlessness, which you can see will give rise to ill will. And so this is a major point. Another one of the higher fetters is the concept of conceit, of comparing ourselves one to another. And in fact, what that means is the habit, the unnecessary habit of constantly checking, am I okay or am I not okay? Do I win or lose? And the very asking of the question means that there's doubt in there about being a loser. And so most of the winning that we do, we trash or we don't allow it to be real. And so, in fact, what we need to do is to start practicing that quality that I am a winner, period. And that the loser is dwelling in the past. And by not dwelling in the past, I'm now a winner. By living in the present moment, I'm winning. Okay, so that loser-winner mentality actually then starts because we're no longer comparing ourselves to winner or loser. That I've already decided winner. I've already decided I'm okay. I'm already decided, lion time. I'm joining the Lions Club. All right. That's what that means is that we know that we're giving up the doubt at that level about whether or not we can do the path, because we've already had enough experience of it, knowing that we can do this. And so it's our own, in fact, investigation that rids us of that doubt about ultimately who am I in relationship to others. And so I take on that mantle. I'm a lion. I'm a winner. But by doing, and another word for that, by the way, is the word Aryan or noble. But by being a lion or being the noble, that means that now we see things that other people can't see because of their ignorance. And that starts to build up a new kind of responsibility based upon wisdom. That part of the problem of becoming wise is it is actually taking on new levels of responsibility. But that's also built into one's right effort of, yes, I can do this. Yes, I can match. Yes, I can stand up. No, I do not have to hide under the bed.
Yeah.
And so that quality of changing that mindset then to I am a winner actually and fully addresses that other related habit of comparing ourselves one to another. And another quality is that because we've come as far as we have in the Dhamma, and we recognize that most of the people haven't, that I can find comparisons and ways to compare myself to other people to where I always win, every time. That also kind of takes the energy out of comparing ourselves to others. In fact, it's kind of ridiculous. Why should a lion going around comparing himself to mice and rats and no sense at all? And so that's that Fetter that is normally considered number 7. The word for it is manna. And manna always will go, if that comparison is done. Imagine that this whole idea that we're talking about is a mathematical sign, and that there's a lot of them that are put in this one particular kind of position. One of them is an equal sign. Another one is a greater than. Another one is greater than or equal. Another one is less than. Another one is less than or equal. Another one is equivalent. Another one is not equal, okay? All of these things are in mathematics the way of comparing the left to the right. And what we have to do is to break that link. We have to take that equation out of the equals out of the equation, because it's not an equation. It's two individual humans that suffer in their own ways.
Yeah.
And so we stop comparing ourselves to others, and that is liberating. It is liberating.
And this is like, you talked about once about right view being like having an objective view and seeing the whole pecking order at once, and not only your position. This is basically this, right? Because you take out the equals and you see the whole picture.
Yes, exactly correct. So all of this stuff is fitting right in. It's beginning to gel for you. You can see, oh yeah, that and that fits together. Yes, it does. That the Buddha even said, the name of the sutta is the Simba, but I don't remember the reference. It's somewhere in the Anguttara Nikaya, I think, where he was walking with a bunch of students through the Simba forest at a time when the leaves were falling, and it was quite beautiful. Everything was yellow, whatever. And he grabs a handful of leaves and he says, which is greater, this whole forest full of leaves or this handful? And they say, oh, the leaves on the floor, that's much greater. And he says, well, this is all I have to teach. And so now since then, we've always used that quality of the handful of leaves. And one of the qualities of it, wow, it really is a handful. But that's the loser's mentality. When we come from, wow, what a handful of stuff, into, oh, it's only a handful, that's actually an attitude change from loser's mentality to the winner's mentality. I can handle this. There's not that much to it. And the more we inspect it, the more we recognize that there's really not that much into it. That in fact, the dauntingness of it was simply because daunting and being daunted is habitual. That there's nothing daunting about any topic other than that we add to it. So that would be the quality then, daunting, that if you think that a new course or literature or whatever like that is daunting, that object does not have any daunting in it. That is all coming from one's own mind.
Yeah.
That in fact the Dhamma or the book or whatever is empty of daunting. And in fact is empty of everything except what the student adds to it himself. And so by seeing this emptiness in everything, we stop comparing one nothing to another nothing.
Right.
Because they're incomparable. Another quality, and I had to learn this was through, I think, it was in one of the graduate courses that I was having in math. And that was, it came out with the quality of criteria. I remember the course. Yeah, it was a course in stats. And what the professor was doing was he was showing that it's almost impossible to do a real poll that gives you real data. And that it all has to do with criteria selection. If you ask a question in one way, you're going to get one answer and one group of voters to say this thing, and then you ask that same question in a different way, and you're going to get different results.
Right.
And so almost always, when we compare ourselves to others, we kind of do it in stages so that by the time it's fully done, we already knew what the outcome was going to be anyway. But every time that we compare ourselves to others, we wind up in suffering. One of the ways of suffering is pride. And somehow or another, everybody can see it but us. And the other one is jealousy or envy. Wanting something else that someone has, wanting a quality or a trait or something that oftentimes in religious systems that people will be jealous of the abbot or the head monk or whoever's in charge or whatever like that, that it becomes a social climbing kind of thing. That in fact jealousy is one of the major reasons why greed is as effective as it is. Otherwise, greed would be fulfilled. But it's because of the underlying jealousy. Oh, my greed was wonderful, but his is even bigger. And so I've got to increase my greed to catch up with his greed. In the U.S., they have a saying called keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah.
All right. Well, if I'm trying to keep up with them, that means they're already ahead, which means I've already put myself in the loser, the victim's position. And not only that, but I'm giving them my happiness. And so this is an underlying deep thing that we have of comparing ourselves with others. And when we can give that up, and the way to give it up is by seeing it when we do it. And it most likely, the place that we're going to do it is around the actual people that we know or that we see often. perhaps even on television or whatnot. But what I'm getting at is that the human being is a pattern matching machine. And because you're around other people, you begin to see patterns set up, and you compare those patterns with your patterns, and the next thing you know, you're full on into competition with someone. And so the people that we're most likely to compete with or to compare ourselves with are the people that we know.
Mm.
But once we recognize how painful it is to and the devastation that we have, an example of that is pride. Pride's very difficult to see, but a lot of, for instance, not just in Christianity, but in Buddhism, a lot of monks and others get very prideful over how much Dhamma they know. And so when they go to a new group or a new place or they meet some new people, one of the things that we would do, or what I would do, I saw myself put it to a stop, but it was painful when I saw it. And people still do that, and that is that we introduce ourselves in such a way that we're inviting a competition. I know more Dhamma than you know. And so that prevents them from being friends. And there's a lot of selfishness built into that. And so one of the keys to seeing the deep selfishness is to recognize when we try to compare ourselves to others. And where that part of the issue of pride comes in is that anybody who does this and is around others is more than likely soon enough going to run into someone who is clearly superior in his Dhamma knowledge, and he's going to take you on and chew you up.
And this is the main problem with pride, right? For like in a selfish view, like one day you're gonna meet someone who is better in that thing you were comparing to yourself to others, and were being prideful because you were around other people who you were superior in one way or another. But one day you're gonna meet someone who yeah.
Yes, and in fact, old Dhamma teachers will come across new students. They're new to the teacher. The teacher and the student are new to each other, but the student is already an old hand in the Dhamma, and he's coming to challenge the new teacher. This is, in fact, it happens, by the way, much more frequently in Mahayana than it does in Theravada. Theravada has a few things about it, and one of them is keeping the hierarchy structure in place. But an example of that would be when monks are out traveling and they want to spend a night at a monastery, they've got to go through a test to see if they are actually real monks or not. And so they have to answer a few questions, okay? Well, some of them that are real monks, that are really traveling monks, they get pretty good at this kind of stuff, and so they wind up competing with the temple abbot. But the outcome is to get a night's sleep. But you can see how that easily can go wrong, because it's not just in Buddhists like that, but it's everywhere. Another example is the U.S. Days of the Old West with gunslingers. And the old gunman has finally hung us up. He's gotten married and he's settled down and he doesn't want it. And the next thing you know, Billy the Kid or somebody's coming up challenging him. And he hadn't even picked up his gun in 5 years. But he's got to shoot this kid simply because the kid's looking for getting a name for himself by comparing himself to others. How fast are you? So that's a bad case of it. But that's the mentality that we have, that it becomes very subtle and rests into the workplace, so that a workplace generally will have a hierarchy. And it's based upon everybody's comparison and jockeying for positions and all of that kind of stuff.
Mm.
And so when we stop doing that, we can be much more friends with everybody. Because if we're in a pecking order,
Yeah.
then we're sure to get pecked from one direction or the other. And so that's one of the qualities that the Buddha talked about, was this quality that's a fetter, is the Pali word for it is mana. And it means conceit. But that English language word conceit is kind of missing because it only gives half the story.
Mm-hmm.
That's the conceit is only when it ends in pride or in self-aggrandizement. But the comparison also can go in any direction at all, so that it can go into jealousy. And in fact, the jealousy winds up being a new competition over and over and over again. So you see that situation arising where people are constantly in competition with each other. This, by the way, will happen with brothers, because they're constantly competing with each other, comparing one another to each other. And it can get then that one thing that's buried into the human psyche, just like many other traits, then become organizational. For instance, one of the things that happens with any large organization is whatever its intention was, whether it was altruism or like the Red Cross or a business or whatever like that, whatever it is, because everybody in that organization wants to keep their job, everyone is invested in the continuance of that organization. So, for instance, the Red Cross, they wind up spending 80% of all of the money they get just on staying alive, keeping, doing advertisements, having staff, and only 20% actually goes to blood transfusions in the field.
Yeah.
All right. So that's another example of it. On that end is the self-preservation mechanism. But this other thing that we're talking about with that idea of conceit, this is why large corporations compete with each other unnecessarily. Instead of having the goal of doing, let us say, the right thing with the company for the better benefit of many people, they wind up, no, the only intention of this organization is to compete with that organization over there.
Yeah, I thought about it sometimes because it seems silly, right? Like a few companies in each field do exactly the same thing, building up technology or I don't know, and yeah.
It gets worse. Nations do this.
Yeah.
They compete as a national. Look at Putin. He's taking his whole Russia and trying to compete against the U.S. on one front, and China's trying to compete with the U.S. on another front. Meanwhile, Trump, he doesn't know what to do. Because he's trying to compete with everybody but himself.
Yeah.
And so even at the level of nations, you'll see this. But guess what? It gets even deeper than that. Religions compete with each other. Always this competition. Thinking that only we can be good if we hurt them, make them look bad.
Yeah.
And so that's what happens with every election, especially in the United States, that most of the money is put on what they call negative advertisement. Not that I'm good, but that he's bad. Putting down the opponent like that. So when we begin to see how painful this is on a personal level, we also can see it, how it happens and how painful it is to society on all the various levels that we're talking about, from small organizations, large organizations, nations, religions, political parties are all doing it in the sense of competition, when cooperation would do them a whole lot better.
Yeah.
Part of that has to do with the idea of the zero-sum game. In other words, if I give you a gift, then you gain, but I lose. Rather than the understanding, no, if I give you a gift, then we both gain.
Yeah.
So wisdom and knowledge is very much like fire. That the more you spread, the bigger the fire. To where the other is not, and that is water. When you use half the water, it's gone. But knowledge grows when it flows. And that's one of the qualities of the Dhamma is to bring it out. It's been in hiding now for centuries for various reasons. But Bhikkhu Buddhadasa says, oh no, now is the time to shout the noble Dhamma from the housetop. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for telling me about it.
All right, so today I want to finish with this one, with this manna, this conceit, because I want you to also start to investigate that as how you're actually seeing it in operation for yourself, that you're far enough along with the Dhamma that you probably, I don't know if you're still using the bell or whatever to go off, but at any time that you become mindful, start looking, oh, have I been conceited lately? Have I been comparing myself to others lately? How's my restlessness? How's this stuff going right now? What's it like to be free from restlessness? What's it like to be free from comparing myself to others? And take a little Dhamma moment very often.
Yeah, I'm still using the bell, and I don't think I will stop anytime soon, because otherwise I'll forget, and then it all goes downhill.
Very excellent. All right. Well, let's finish this talk now, and I'll see you soon, and we'll continue on. There's some other stuff to learn.
Great.
All righty.
All right.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a nice evening. Bye.